All right, so,
Go ahead.
hi, I'm Kaolin Davis, and we're here with Norma Holt of The Women Who Faced the Sea. And I asked her here, in fact, as a favor, because one of them has come down, and I find it's really important to have the opportunity to know more of the history, even though she's told it lots of times. But to hear the history so that for people who it's the first time that they're going to see images of it and possibly consider helping us to fundraise to put one of them back on the wall, that we hear the story of how they came to be in the first place. So, Norma Holt. So, Norma, tell us about how you chose to do them and that location and who the women are.
It wasn't any one person's idea. It isn't the kind of thing that comes from one person. It comes from a number of people talking about what to do or how to do it, or an idea that they have or something that they would like to see. And at the time I'd been working with Eva, and I also was seeing a lot of Paul Bowen, who was always full of instantaneous creative thoughts, and in various conversations with all of us, the idea of enlarging some of those photographs that they knew I had taken so that they could be seen all over town and people could see them in different locations or whatever, we weren't sure. We had many plans before we arrived at that building. We had lots of discussion. It went on for a while. And then it sort of just came to a head. I don't know who said what when. It just came to a head that it would be nice. It was time to do a tribute to the women of the community, because every time I had read an article about Provincetown in a travel magazine or in the New York Times travel section, it was always fishermen, fishermen, fishermen. And the women were never given any space. So, and I'm, that enough of a feminist to object to that. So we are finally out of all the conversation with everybody chipping in over a number of months or maybe even years, 2 or 3 years. We decided something that would honor the women of the town and just the women of the town. My original concept did not narrow itself to fishermen. The town to me was a fishing village. The foundation for it was fishing, that's true. But a number of the women in the town functioned in a very real capacity other than as fishermen's wives.
Mm-hmm.
They ran the businesses and they took care of the children, and they did all kinds. The men were away for months at a time, and they held this town together, whether it was doing the laundry or manning the stores or cooking food or teaching or whatever it was. There they were, and strong and resolute and determined and very, very strong and very religious, which was interesting to me because I'm not, but they were, and and then when the idea came, where to put it, there were many ideas. Something like putting a sailboat out in the water. That was Paul Bowen's. He said, "How about we have this big sailboat, and at night we'll project them on the sails," which was beautiful.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit whimsical and impractical and limited. And Eva knew about the building. She lives here all year round, so she knew about the building at the end of the pier, and she took us over there to see that. And of course, it was obviously a wonderful place. Although I was very drawn to hanging them on the side of the monument, but that's not allowed to hang anything on the side of the monument, so it didn't even get discussed beyond my expressing that idea. I thought it would be seen from miles all around. But anyway, so the building on the pier, which means that at that point, okay, that's what we're going to do. At that point, I was on my own, so totally on my own. So well, all right, who owned the building and how do you get permission for it and so on. I was going to dinner one night at the home on the West End, Donald Winter and Richard DeFrumolo. They owned a house right abutting the Red Inn, and I was talking to them about this idea and the illustration of how one gets started, and they said, well, we have cocktails with the owner of the building. Why don't you let us start with there for you? So they got permission. I didn't meet the man. He just said, yes, you can. And he designated where, because there are doors there that he felt might sometime need to be opened for various other activity. So he said only those places, which meant only, well, we didn't know it was going to be only 5 or what it was. At that point, we had no idea what size could be printed, where you would print them, how you would print them, was all a beginning for me. So there you, will that answer that question?
I would say. So once you decided that you were going to put it on that building, then how did you narrow it down to those number of women? Was that the next step that you went through?
Well, the next step was he showed us what amounted to 5 places, which is where they are. Because you'll notice in between there are doors.
Right.
And in the front there's a big door. There's a lot of activity goes in it. Boats go in and out of there. So and he didn't want anything on the other side.
Right.
And we didn't either, really.
Right.
So he designated 5 spots. That didn't mean only 5 pictures could go in there. But we thought, well, let's make them big enough to fill those 5 spots. So we had to find 5 photographs among the many that I had been taking over the years of the Portuguese women. I've been doing it for fun. I was, at that time, very busy photographing children for their families and charging an exorbitant fee and being very in demand, and I made out very well with that. But I was inching away from it because I was getting bored with it, and I was getting physically unable to keep up with the children. But, I let them run loose, and we shot whatever happened, but I was beginning to be impossible. So I thought, well, let's go in the other direction, sit and talk and have kale soup with nice, friendly old women, and you won't have to exert so much energy. So anyway, it sort of came out of all that. And so I'd been, every summer for a number of years, been photographing 2 or 3 women on my own.
Now, how long ago was that you started the photographing of the women?
Well, let's see. 15 years, more, maybe 20 years.
And so the pictures have been up how many years now?
I think about 12.
All right, so that's probably, say, 20 years ago, or?
I would think I started then. Yeah, just doing a couple of them in the summer because I had to pay for. Nobody was,
It was all you're doing.
First,
right?
I just took the film and had them processed, etc., on my own. And then Berta Walker heard I was doing that, and she offered to help me defray the expenses. So of the film and the processing and so on. So anyway, at some point I just stopped. I don't know why I stopped, but the names I did get, I got from the senior center, from Grace Caveira. And I'd call up the women, and I'd call somebody up and I'd say, who I was, and I wanted to come and talk to them and photograph them. Oh no, ugly old woman like me, you don't want to. Well, I said, no. I said, well, all right, never mind. I won't take any pictures. But let me come over and say hello anyway. And, I'm not busy. Maybe you got free time, a little bit of free time. So I'd go over there. Invariably, I would keep the camera. I wouldn't take it out. I just would sit there and talk about whatever. I thought you were going to take pictures. Well, can I? Oh, yes. Like 3 rolls later, why are you leaving? And or I bring out the tape recorder. Oh, I have nothing to say. I don't remember anything. Well, I had been doing some research. I'd gone to the library and looked up old advocates and looked up things that had been happening when they were young and asked them about them. What about that thing, that dance that went on there and there? Or what was it like when Roosevelt came to lay the cornerstone for the monument and so on? Well, one answer brought another, information brought it. 2 tapes later, they, were still going strong. So it was like that with all of them. Oh, no pictures and no memories. Tons of this wonderful information on a number of tapes that are also in the archives at the monument. But some of them are a little revealing about some of the unpleasant things that happen in any community, and nobody has wanted anybody to hear that. But that's unfortunate. Maybe someday they'll they'll realize that it.
So that's where these photographs are,
Yes, well, eventually, skip to that, I needed some money. I was always broke, and so somebody suggested that the monument would like to buy the copyrights and own the negatives, and that they had very up-to-date archival storage spots for things like that. So I made a deal with them and gave them to them for very little. They should have brought me more money than they did, but
life is like that.
Be that as it may, yeah, what the hell.
All right, so after you knew that you were going to put 5 images on the building, and you had decided which 5 images they were going to be, how did the process move forward from there? How did you choose on the printing of them? How did you choose on the framing of them? How did all those particulars come to be? And how was the fundraising, because that's a lot of fundraising that needed to be done to make that come to be. What were those, how were those aspects come to pace?
Well, we needed a company that printed digitally and that did outdoor posters or big, like there's companies that print those all the time on all kinds of material. And they make these, like you've seen in Times Square or similar places, those giant posters, they're done on this. Those are the companies I had to seek. I'd never dealt with them before. So there was one recommended to us in Boston, and I liked the idea of keeping it as close to home as possible. So Donald Winter and I went over to Boston and had a meeting with this company that had been recommended, and they were equipped to, and they sent somebody over to the pier, who met me there, and the man took all the measurements and helped me decide what the sizes could be based on the space and the printing process that they had, and that combination is what decided the size they became. Digitally, you have unlimited possibilities, but printing processes have limitations. So we decided on what it would be, and they went off and they were proceeding to draw up a diagram of how the frame should be made. That was the major part of it, was how to attach them to the building once they got through printing them, and how to mount them, how they were going to be hung, and all the detail. So they drew up all of this virtually blueprint, in the middle of which they went bankrupt. So there we were with plans, but no company.
Mm-hmm.
So since I knew about printing companies that did color or black and white, or I had lots of contacts in New York, I started making a couple phone calls to people I knew in New York, and I ended up with this company that did most of the stuff that you do see on Times Square. Enormous things. You could have, the side of Empire State Building if you wanted. So I showed them the pictures, and I went to their office in New York and looked at materials to print on. I had this idea of silks or something like that, and they said, well, it would last a few days in the country conditions you discussed, salt water and heavy winds, etc. There's only one thing that really can be printed on, and that's this perforated vinyl. And so, okay, it had to be perforated vinyl, vinyl being a nasty word to any ecologists, but it was either that or nothing. So it doesn't biodegrade or whatever the hell the term is. So I sent them the negatives. I sent them negatives and prints. We made beautiful 16 by 20 prints. I thought you had to work with that, but it turns out they didn't at all. They took the negative and they made their own little whatever to stick in the computer. But they were ready to print, so they invited me to come and see how it was done. And they took me out to New Jersey, where there was this block-long single-story building, and it had maybe half a dozen machines in there that had different kinds of material on bolts of material, like fabric that looked like you would see a bolt of fabric, only it was different kinds of printable material that would last outdoors. The ones that were printed for companies didn't have to be long-lasting. They changed them maybe every month or something. So they could use the silks or the whatever materials they wanted to, because when they fell apart, they just put new ones on. You know, if you're advertising a famous cigarette or whatever the hell. So they took me out there, and here was this 16-foot long bolt of vinyl on this machine, and one end of it, there was a large computer, and along in front of it was this virtually track, and a box on the track, and that was the ink. And they put a chair down, and they said, all right, we'll print one, show you. Watch us print. So I'm sitting there, and I'm sitting there, and sitting there, and nothing's happening that I could see. It moved so slowly that it didn't appear to be moving at all. And after maybe half an hour, here comes the top of her head, and the glasses, and all of the time I couldn't see that the roll was turning. The ink container was going back and forth like mad. That very good ink, which wasn't supposed to last all these years, is still there. That's what shows you the photograph. The ink is not supposed to have faded long ago, according to their statistics. So I think these have some kind of a guardian angel. They're not supposed to last like that. The company won't believe me. But anyway, after an hour, sitting there, he had kind of this enormous face. You know, I sort of felt I had to back away from it. It was overwhelming me. I couldn't believe it. And this thing comes sliding off the roller and down onto the floor, and then shut off. And he went and took the blade and cut that one off the roll, and said, okay, you know, now we'll put another one in, but we have to take you back to New York. We can't keep you here anymore. So anyway, I went home, and that's the story of how they got. Then they called me up and said they were ready. In the meantime, I was trying to find somebody who could mount them, asking everybody, did they know somebody qualified? And I was doing some kind of work for the people who built the Whalers Wharf. And they said they had a contractor that did a lot of things for them. He was a building contractor, but they were sure he could do anything you could throw at him. So we talked to him. Max Reddish in Brewster, Massachusetts, on the Cape. Max Reddish was a building contractor. I hope, still is a building contractor. I don't know. And he came out and looked at the space, and I discussed the material with him, and he decided on a price. So I ordered them printed. When I ordered them printed, and I ordered him, I said he was going to get them and he would put them up, I had no money raised yet, nothing. And so Donald started giving cocktail parties and calling up people who could write fat checks. I called the people at the Siemens Bank. I called the people at the Banner. I called the people at the Portuguese Festival. And all of them came forth with 1,000 here, 2,000 there. And then we had to figure out where it was going to go. There being an attitude, and I was a little bit leery about handling the money myself in town, because it was just after Jay Critchley had been so disgustingly accused of using some of the money that was raised by the
oh no.
Oh yes, in the paper and everything. They were accusing him of taking some of the money. So I said, learning from Jay, there are some horrible people in the world. He was really very badly treated at one point there. I decided it had to go, none of it was going to come to me. And also it was suggested that people would be very willing, or more willing, to come up with enough money if with tax deduction. So I had to go to a nonprofit. So I went to Hunter Hanian, who was director of the Fine Arts Work Center, and he agreed readily. Yes, they would be the conduit. That money could be sent to. The checks would be made out to them. They would deposit it in a separate account, and they would send each of the donors a note indicating that they had a tax deduction. So we proceeded that way. $25 here, $100 there, $500 there. The total bill being something like $42,000 or $45,000. The biggest part of the cost was the frames and the mounting of the frames. The frames were made from stainless steel. They were custom made by Max Reddish. They were hung on the building by his team of builders. In one morning they hung all 5 of them. It took me 2 years to get the people to finish paying it off for the Fine Arts Work Center bookkeeper to say, okay, Norma, we're done. 2 years. And I always want to say, whenever I get a chance to talk about this, that never in those 2 years did Max Reddish call up and say, where's my money? Never bothered me, never, just waited. He's remarkable. I hope he's still out there.
On a funny aside, you had told me of when the photographs got delivered from New York City to and where they went. So I wanted to have that be part of the interview. Will you tell us about that?
Sure. When the company called me up and said they were ready for shipping, where did I ship them? I said, I'll get back to you. And I called Max Reddish up and I said, what's the address? And he said, well, the barn, Max Reddish's barn in Brewster will do. I said, okay. He said, then just stick them in the barn and tell FedEx or whoever they use to just stick them in Max Reddish's barn in Brewster, and I'll get them from there. I said, okay. So I called them up and I said, Max Reddish's barn in Brewster. They said, what? I mean, these are costing you, what was it, $10,000? I said, that's how they do things on the Cape. Nobody's going to take them. They're perfectly safe in that barn, and that's where you should ship them. They said, well, all right.
Not locked or anything.
And it worked fine. I mean, Max found them when he was ready to find them, and he took and brought them over, and however he put them up and put the frame up, or put the frame up and put them up. I don't know. I wanted to get there to watch him, and I called and asked him, I said, let me know when you get there. So he called me, he said, okay, I'm going to try one. And they had to get a cherry picker. Of course, he had to get up high on the end of that pier. He had about 10 inches. I don't know how we got in there. Anyway, so I got myself together and I got down there, and in a couple of hours I thought it would take him at least that to put each one up. They were finished. I was so annoyed because I had a bottle of champagne and some glasses. And they said, keep the champagne, buy us a case of beer. So instead, we sat there on the pier drinking beer, and it was
celebrating the fair. They were.
Yeah. So that's how it happened.
All right.
Well, when I went down there, and they were all up there. So then I went. I couldn't see them from standing right in front of them. Although I looked up, and that was inspiring. But I went over to Macmillan Pier and looked across that strip of water there over to the other pier, and I was very. I think I started to cry because I was amazed at how beautiful it was, and delighted that I had done these photographs, that I had made this tribute to. I was just pleased, and I hope the women would be pleased, although most of them were dead by that time. But I was hoping the community would be, and I was just very proud, that's all.
And
What?
did you anticipate that they would be up as long as they have been, and that they have become so beloved by the community when you put them up? And would you like to see them be here, sort of indefinitely, or do you see them having a time frame? I know by now you're kind of sick of it being the only thing that's your claim to fame in town, since you're an amazing photographer who there's so many other aspects of your work.
I would like to see them go on indefinitely, of course, because the community can benefit from it. So when I was trying to raise money for it, I went to the then tourist board, and the then selectmen, and they turned me down flat. They said that it wasn't enough of an event for them to put money into it. They were not interested. So they didn't help me at all. But I would like to see, you know, I think they make a major contribution. They're timeless. The history of the Portuguese community should be recorded in any way possible. And it's, as far as I'm concerned, the major thing about this community, plus its art, the art colony aspect of it. Those are the two parts of this that make it exciting. And, you know, I mean, it's all, it was a Portuguese fishing village, and it's going to disappear completely in due time. Nobody will know that or care. And the longer those photographs stay up there, the more that will be a constant reminder of both what the women and who the women were, and how they were, and that there was a Portuguese foundation to this whole place. So I'd like to, when the company said if you get 2 years out of them, you're doing what you're doing, because I was describing saltwater spray and pigeon poop and all of the rest of it, and they said, well, maybe 2 years, and it's now at least I think 12. So they still are. They're faded in my eyes, but the average person who sees them does not think that they can see them quite clearly. They were much deeper, much more contrasty originally. They faded quite a bit. So that they should continue. If not, if that building doesn't stay or the pier takes on another whole aspect, then I think the idea should continue indefinitely. It's a tribute to the women, and they need it, because it still tries to be a man's world. Well, when I thought of doing it to begin with, it was, yes, the fishermen's wives, but as part of it, but it was the women of the community that I wanted to honor, and that I still feel I want to honor, whether they were hairdressers or waitresses or mothers or doctors or fishermen's wives. That all of the whole damn community was always looking out to sea. Nobody benefited from a shipwreck. Everybody were worried when the boat didn't come home on time, whether you were married to the men on the boat, or you were the sister of, or the mother of, or the aunt of. Everybody was connected. Everybody was related. But I wanted to honor them all. The women, and the whole town looked out to sea. That was, why not? Why? How else? What else? You know. So that's how I still feel about it. Those pictures, to me, honor all of the women who worked hard in this community, kept it going. Men would be gone 3 and 4 months at a time, and some of the men also had a family at the other end of their 3-month stay. So there was a lot of things like that going on. So the women who kept this live and took care of the children, that's who I honor. Whether they were fishermen wives or whether they, whatever, doesn't matter, it's all the same.
There you go. Well, thank you, Norma. Thank you, Norma Holt, for being here with us and telling your story about the women who faced the sea. Thank you.
We're here today with Norma Holt, the photographer who created the iconic Ladies of Provincetown installation, They Also Face the Sea. Hello, Norma.
Hi.